And a hearty welcome and happy Sunday to one and all. This is episode 154 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Sunday late afternoon here with me in New York. If you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, enjoy the content, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, and turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Spotify or iTunes, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. So today will mark the 14th entry in our continuing series of most underrated film performances. And the movie and performance we're going to spotlight today, well, it was a long-delayed sequel, kind of like Top Gun, which came out in 1986 and had a sequel that was slated to come out in 2020, but as we know, that didn't happen. It was pushed back, and it ended up being a massive, beyond massive box office hit. But the film we're going to talk about today had one major actor from Top Gun in a long gestating sequel that ended up being pretty successful financially, despite being set and produced so many years after the events of the first movie. The movie in question is 1986's Martin Scorsese film, The Color of Money, which came out roughly 25 years after the original, called The Hustler. The star is Tom Cruise, a very young Tom Cruise in The Color of Money. Gives the kind of performance where some usually would be a younger person, but if somebody is curious how Tom Cruise became Tom Cruise, is there a particular performance that I would point to? Yeah, it's this one. So Cruise was a rising star in the early to mid 1980s. You look at films like Taps, where it's pretty much Timothy Hutton's movie. That was 1981, but Cruise plays a key supporting role. I think he was 18 in real life when it was filmed. Maybe he looks 15. He just looks younger. He had all the right moves and The Outsiders. And he did the movie Legend with Ridley Scott, which is, I think it's pretty underrated, especially if you watch Ridley Scott's director's cut with the amazing Jerry Goldsmith. There's that name again, Jerry Goldsmith. Jerry Goldsmith's musical score for Legend, which was scrapped in favor of a synth score from Tangerine Dream when the movie was taken away from Ridley Scott by, man, I tell you, there are some people in Hollywood that have reputations for making mistakes. And Sid Sheinberg, the chairman of MCA Universal, he took Brazil away from Terry Gilliam. He wanted to name Back to the Future Spaceman from Pluto, and he took Legend away from Ridley Scott. Anyway, Jerry Goldsmith's musical score was phenomenal. The movie now is available in the originally intended cut, and I think Legend is a great film. The 90-minute version is trash. The full version is great, but the qualifier is, it was Tom Cruise's last movie before he became Tom Cruise, before he became almost a brand name simply by his appearance on a poster. Irony of ironies, Cruise's performance in Legend is nothing. It's Tim Curry's movie. Even though we can't recognize Tim Curry, it's Tim Curry's movie. He plays darkness. He's basically, I guess he's supposed to be Satan. But Tom Cruise went to work on Top Gun, and Top Gun the plan was always that it was going to be released in the summer of 1986. So Top Gun, the original, was shot between the months of June, late June to be specific, into December. So it's a long shoot, 6 months, whether it's 2020, 2024, 1996, 1986. A 6-month shooting window, it usually would imply that there were some production issues. I don't know about any mechanics of any production issues, but I know that that's a long production schedule. So Top Gun filmed from late June 1985 into right around Christmas 1985, in advance of Memorial Day week. I don't know exactly when it was released, but summer 1986. The Color of Money began filming in January of 1986. And I think that movie had about 3 to 4 months of active production. And what that means is, after what had to be a very arduous and trying shoot, in which Tom Cruise went from being 22 to 23 years old during filming of Top Gun, within 3 weeks, he was back on a horse, metaphorically, making The Color of Money. And I'm trying to think of what they did with his hair, how they managed to have him have such long hair in 3 weeks. That I don't know. That's something that trivia hasn't uncovered what they did. That could mean that he wasn't involved in some of the later aspects of the production of Top Gun, because he has short cropped hair in Top Gun, and he has a pretty 80s, if you even want to call it that, hairstyle in The Color of Money. But the idea is, The Color of Money was always going to be an awards contender. The original, The Hustler, is easily top 10 greatest sports movies ever made, and there are many people that would have it in the top 5. Now, do you think pocket billiards, is it a sport? I'll leave that to greater minds than myself to discern. But it is technically a sports movie. It was because of the pedigree of Martin Scorsese, who had already done Mean Streets, Taxi Driver, Goodfellas. Not Goodfellas, I meant Raging Bull. Scorsese was, despite he had a lot of personal issues, there were many who were already considering him the finest director working in Hollywood, that he was about as good as it got. And so The Color of Money, the excitement from the original, and Tom Cruise, who was a coming star, and especially after the success of Top Gun, for my money, I think he looks younger in The Color of Money. I almost would have expected that the shooting schedules were flipped, but no, Cruise is younger in Top Gun, just as the shooting schedules would indicate. But to me, he looks younger in The Color of Money. He looks more like a kid as Vincent than as Pete Mitchell, aka Maverick. The other reason why Color of Money was always going to be an awards contender is because Paul Newman, who was already an absolute legend by the mid-1980s, was kind of on the downside of his career. Not for any reason other than that he was getting a little bit old to play leading man roles. And he had never won an acting Oscar. He had been nominated repeatedly for the Academy Award. Movies like HUD, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. I mean, he could give you chapter and verse, Cool Hand Luke, of all the extraordinary performances, The Sting, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Hell, even Fort Apache, The Bronx, The Verdict, he was nominated. The sense was that Newman was due. And this movie, given the pedigree that Scorsese had directed, Mr. De Niro to spectacular effect in Taxi Driver and again in Raging Bull. I mean, those are, I'm one of those people who I almost feel bad when young movie fans, when they see a very old or older actor or actress and aren't familiar with what they were. De Niro's performances in those movies, but in particular Taxi Driver, where you stop thinking that you're watching an actor, and it feels as if you are watching a person disintegrate in front of your eyes. There are levels of greatness in acting that can be achieved, and I believe that De Niro, his performance in Taxi Driver is on another level to almost anything I've seen. The idea, though, was, I hate to say it this way because I know the Oscars are political, whatever that even means, because people were saying they were political 50 years ago. Well, what do you mean? What kind of political? Well, there's a lot of people within the industry and within the Motion Picture Academy that they decided that this year this person is going to win and this year this person. It never works out that way. Or I should say, don't count on that, because 1996, it was Lauren Bacall's time. In quotes, 100% guarantee Lauren Bacall was going to win supporting actress for The Mirror Has Two Faces, which was not a very good movie. I have no issue with Barbra Streisand. That movie's not good. Sorry. She didn't win. So with buzz building about Paul Newman's performance in Martin Scorsese's The Color of Money, the film was a way bigger hit than it otherwise might have been, not because people were excited to see a sequel 25 years after the original, because target audience would have been young people. It wouldn't have been people in their 60s. Movies rarely target old crowds, at least not your conventional R-rated fare, with violence, gambling, sex. And Newman's character's fucking liquor salesman. It's not exactly, a good example for the youth of the country. It's targeted at a younger crowd. The movie was a big hit. I believe more because Tom Cruise had just starred in Top Gun, which was an unbelievably big hit. So the upshot of my little narrative, getting not even sidetracked, but it's important to understand Scorsese and Paul Newman. Paul Newman ended up winning the Academy Award for Best Actor for this movie. In a similar vein to something that would happen 7 years later, the wrong guy got the hardware. Now, I love Paul Newman, but I would say that Paul Newman's performance in The Sting, Paul Newman's performance in The Verdict, his performance in Cool Hand Luke or HUD run circles around what he does in The Color of Money. I hate to say it, but it feels like a Lifetime Achievement Award because his co-star, Tom Cruise, it's his movie. Cruise owns this film in much the way, and I love Tom Cruise, but Tom Cruise, I'm sorry, I get my Toms mixed up. I love Tom Hanks, huge Tom Hanks fan. The wrong guy won the Best Actor Oscar of the year of Philadelphia. Denzel's performance is the single finest piece of film acting that one of the all-time GOATs, Denzel, has done. And Tom won the Oscar. Playing it's a challenging role physically, but his character is a good guy at the beginning, and he's a good guy at the end. Denzel Washington's character, Joe Miller, in Philadelphia, starts the film successful, maybe not the greatest lawyer, but he's good enough. He's a bigot. He doesn't like gay people. He's afraid of anybody who's sick, anyone who has AIDS. And through the events of the story, he transforms. And Denzel makes every beat sing. We feel his character evolution without him hitting us over the head or being preachy. It is a beautiful performance. It is calibrated perfectly. And I understand Jonathan Demme, as a filmmaker, was able to get it out of him, not taking anything away from Demme. But Denzel does things in that movie that you don't learn in acting classes. It's something that only the really great ones can do and can impart to the audience without hitting them over the head with it. Tom Cruise in The Color of Money is so solid from start to finish because his character, he almost comes across a little neurodivergent, to be honest. It's not something that I ever would have thought of as a younger person, but he's so flaky and he's eccentric in ways that you're not expecting. And he appears to struggle with basic concepts of social graces, even though he has a hot girlfriend, Mary, again, in quotes, although I don't really need the quotes. Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio is presented as the hot girlfriend, Carmen. And she's very clever and thinks that she can put a few over on Newman's character of, the hustler himself. Eddie Felson is his name, Ed Felson, if you will. And he's too smart for it. But it's a movie where the showier role is Cruise, but he sells it. Even if it is a showier role, he's what we remember about the film. It's Cruise that is taking charge in scenes, within scenes. And Newman spends a lot of the movie reacting. And this is, again, for me, when I think of best actor kind of roles, it's usually not reactive characters, it's characters who take action. Like Denzel in Philadelphia, even though he didn't win. But you think about it, Tom Hanks's character can't find an attorney. No one wants to take his wrongful termination suit because it's a radioactive lawsuit that if it goes wrong, it's going to signal the end of their career. Denzel's character, he knows him, he likes him, he's a better attorney than me, or however you want to say it, and he takes action. This is wrong. I may not like this guy, and under normal circumstances, if I just knew he was gay, I would probably shy away from him. But something has happened. This is not okay, and I am going to take his case, and I'm just going to take my chances. And in the world of The Color of Money, Tom Cruise's character is very reactive, and Tom Cruise's character is very active, and Newman is very reactive. It's just weird of all the movies for him to win an Oscar for. It's this one. So the basic setup of The Color of Money is that it's 25 years after the events of The Hustler. And The Hustler is a great movie, but I should warn you, it is very depressing. You have some incredible actors within the film, such as George C. Scott and the extraordinary fucking home run hitter in whatever he did, Jackie Gleason, in addition to Paul Newman and Piper Laurie. The Hustler does not exactly end particularly well for Paul Newman's character of Ed Felson. Ed Felson, as presented, is a hotshot young kid, an unbelievably talented pool player, billiards, who has a self-destructive streak. Almost as if he doesn't want to succeed, that he's okay failing. He just wants to be able to do his own thing. Well, that kind of attitude can really get you into a lot of trouble. And unfortunately, sometimes self-destructive people end up with their own kind, and it's a great movie. It's beautifully directed, and man, when I tell you, Gleason was a real-life pool shark. He did his own Gleason is extraordinary in the movie. The Color of Money takes place 25 years later. Now, we're led to believe that Ed Felson, Newman's character, I think he's probably supposed to be playing about his actual age, 60-ish. Although if we do the math, he would be closer to 50 than 60. But I think he's playing closer to his real age. Either way, he looks like a guy who has lived and had ups and downs. Now, he is successful. He has money. He's driving a nice new Cadillac. This is not a guy who is struggling. Now, some of the terrible events of the movie The Hustler has left him wounded and scarred to this day. And we get enough of that to understand. But he has money. He doesn't really play pool anymore. We know that he can, but he hasn't really played pool regularly in quite some time. And while he's schmoozing at a bar, he's a liquor salesman, like at the wholesale level, go to various locations, bars, nightclubs. Hey, I got this terrific liquor, single malt. Would you like to try it? I'll give you a deal. This is what he now does for a living. But he misses the action. He misses the action of dingy bar rooms and smoke-filled pool halls. He misses it. And he meets a kid, Tom Cruise's character of Vincent, who reminds him of himself. And he decides to take him and the girlfriend, the Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio character, under his wing to teach him the ropes, to teach him how to be a pool hustler. But I can teach you to not make the mistakes that I made. And then the movie goes from there. So Cruise's character is in a reactive position for early chunks of the movie. And then there is a scene which I believe is the key scene in understanding how did Tom Cruise become Tom Cruise. So they're on a journey early in the film where they go to a town, and the idea of pool hustling, it seems absurd, but the idea is you go to a particular town where you know there are big money games going down. And you don't just go in and mop up and just beat the crap out of everybody. You play a little bit here, a little bit there. You show that you know how to play pool. Whether it's 9-ball, whether it's 15, whatever. You show that you know how to play. But you don't show your best game until you lose a few, and you lose believably. So you have to be a great player to lose believably. This is very important for non-pool players to understand. You can't do this unless you're great. Where your normal shot will be right down the middle, and even trick shots, you're probably going to sink. If you miss, you have to miss in such a slight way that it's believable. It can't be over the top. So they go to this town, and Cruz is told there's a lot of money to be made here. We're going to take our time, and we're going to clean up. But don't do this on your own. Yes, you're better than anyone here, and yes, you'll make money, we'll make money, but we'll make more if you do this my way. Well, it's not good enough for Vincent. He has different self-destructive tendencies. He doesn't drink, and his girlfriend actually cares for him. She's not looking to job him, and she's not self-destructive. So Cruz goes to this pool hall where there are money games going on all over the place, and some people who are willing to drop 500, 1,000, no problem, because they're trying to win. And Cruz goes in, and he immediately challenges the biggest of the big money players. And his comportment during this scene, it's just one of those amazing movie moments where Cruz he has a pool cue and he is ripping it. He is hitting one incredible circus shot after another. He is right on the money every shot. He's blasting the center of the ball and he's dropping it right in the middle of the cup. Like he's not even coming close to missing any shots. And Warren Zevon's classic song, Werewolves of London, is playing on the loudspeaker in the bar. And Cruz is dancing around and he starts doing weird shit with the pool stick. It's like he knows that he's going to star in the movie The Last Samurai 17 years later because he's doing samurai moves with his pool stick. It is a screamingly funny moment in the movie. And he just rips through this guy, doing the exact opposite of what Paul Newman would have wanted him to do, which would be to show up, play some of the big money guys, play well, but not well enough to win. Go in there, maybe win a game, but drop at the right time, and then we'll come back and we'll get 1,000 from this guy and maybe 1,500, whatever the exact amount is. But the idea is not to just win, it's to take the most amount of money, because as Paul Newman says, as Eddie Felson says, money won is twice as sweet as money earned. He's all about that. Him just making money as a liquor salesman all of a sudden isn't as good anymore. He wants to get back to hustling. And there's one moment, again, if you haven't seen the movie The Hustler, but we get it, even if we haven't, because a lot of people who have seen The Color of Money have not seen the original. If you're a Tom Cruise fan and you just want to check it out. But Newman has one moment. It's a moment of just pure sadness, even though he doesn't deliver his lines like that. He's excited for Vincent and for what they might be able to do together. And then, he gets back into shooting pool himself. He says, it was over for me before it really began. And if we've seen The Hustler, we remember the events of it, and it's true. This was a kid who had an insane amount of talent. Newman's character in The Hustler is every bit as good as Vincent, as played by Tom Cruise in The Color of Money. He was literally a Da Vinci with a pool cue. That's how good he was. Now he can play, but it's different. He's older, and he's out of practice. But Cruise's command of the screen, he was 23 when The Color of Money was shot. And as I was saying with the younger Paul Newman and other actors, there's just some people just have the magic. And Tom Cruise, in what was supposed to be a supporting role, every time he's on screen, he's riveting, he's magnetic, because his character is a flake. Newman even explains that when he first met him. He says, you're just such a flake. We can use that to our advantage. But Cruise he's just riveting, because you never know what he's going to say or do. His behavior is unpredictable because he is a kind of flaky, eccentric personality without really being overwhelmed with quirks. This isn't Bobby Fischer freaking out when they're playing chess, in the 1960s because there's noise in a room and he wants to play in a perfectly still room where there's zero noise. Can we maybe play in that broom closet? That's just stupid shit. He's not that. But his character and the thing what Cruise does in the performance, it sneaks up on you because there are more character reveals and twists than we expect. And it's a surprise. The story does follow the kind of classic, and Cruise played these sorts of movies a number of times where there's often an older character, a wise old sage who helps the younger character. Not so much in Top Gun. I know Tom's scared, not so much in Top Gun, but in the movie Cocktail, his friendship with the Brian Brown character, and in Days of Thunder, his friendship with Robert Duvall as, the crew chief. But in this movie, it's Paul Newman. And the film, this is something that you credit to Scorsese. He didn't want to make a conventional movie about a young underdog type making good with the help of a kindly older guy and, with the unwavering support of his girlfriend or future bride or whatever it is. Scorsese's not interested in any of that. He's just interested in character. And when Ed Felson, at one point in the film, and this is probably the scene that got Newman the Oscar, he pretty much allows himself to get hustled. He can still play, but he also is good enough to know when someone is better. But his ego and his pride gets in the way, and he just allows himself to get his clock cleaned. When I say allows himself, he's not trying to lose, but he's out of practice, and he's outgunned, and there is a player that, on his best day, he could have taken this guy, but this isn't his best day because he's out of practice. And the thing is, the way Cruise plays this sequence is beautiful. For a moment, the roles are reversed, and Newman is completely distraught that he's let this happen. And Cruise just, hey, Eddie, it's okay. Eddie, we all have bad days. You've seen me, he's trying, and he's being supportive, but Newman's like, you know what? Fuck this kid. We're done. And so the relationship between the three of them spins in another direction. And the movie kind of climaxes with what's supposed to be like a major billiards championship. And oddly enough, it was set in and around Resorts Atlantic City, which at the time was the first, it had been the first hotel casino in Atlantic City. But when this movie was shot, it was owned by Merv Griffin. And so there's a lot of really cool shots of what the Atlantic City boardwalk looked like, in the mid-1980s. And so Cruise is still with Carmen, Mary Elizabeth's character, still together. And even though he and Eddie, they haven't seen each other, we're led to believe in a month, 2 months, whatever it is, they're cordial. Cruise may be a little bit miffed at the way things kind of turned out, that Eddie just got so distraught about losing that he just kind of said, you know what, here's some money. Get the fuck out of here. We're done. But there's more to Cruise's character of Vincent. And he makes a series of decisions that we as the audience are not privy to and we don't realize and we're stunned by. And a young actor carries it off and holds his own in what would be considered almost acting titan showdowns, although Cruise obviously was not an acting titan. And there are many that just think he isn't a good actor to begin with. But in moments where Paul Newman is giving him everything he has, every piece of actor studio level training, Cruise is holding his own. He's not giving ground. And in fact, he's advancing. He's making the scenes and not the other way around. Now, I know a lot of people, the film is very highly rated, I should point out. Few people, where I was going with this, there are very few people who would consider The Color of Money to be among Scorsese's even top 10. It is a lesser work in the career of a master filmmaker, an extraordinary talent. But it's 88% on Rotten Tomatoes. That should give you some idea that if you haven't seen The Hustler, but if you sit down in front of the TV, because the film, you can find it on regular TV and it's streaming all over the place. You might have to pay a couple of bucks on Amazon Prime. But if you settle in, you're going to like it. You will get the Scorsese craftsmanship. It's there. You will also come away wondering, I don't understand how Tom Cruise didn't Like, how did Newman win the hardware? What does he do in this film? Tom Cruise, every scene he's in is dominating. And he's not even dominating in a showy way. He's not doing it like, oh, Cruise just was stealing shit from Newman. No, Newman loved Cruise. They were buddies. They were best pals. And when Newman got a Lifetime Achievement Award a number of years later, he asked Cruise to be the one to present it to him, and Cruise was more than happy to accept. They raced cars together. They broke course records for speed together. Newman loved Tom Cruise. And Newman wasn't that old when he died. He died of cancer. He's been gone 15, 16 years now. It's really horrendous. When I say he wasn't that old, he was in his 80s, but he wasn't that old. He stopped working because he just, his eyes were bad and unfortunate. But Cruise, to me, steals the movie from its star and from an all-time fucking legend in Paul Newman, one of the truly great people to ever work in the movie business, an extraordinary movie star, and a better human being. But this movie is Tom Cruise's movie. And I don't know how people slept on this performance when the film came out. I don't know how he didn't get more acclaim for the role. But you watch this movie and you tell me I'm wrong. You tell me he sucks in this film. I don't think so. You are going to reach the same conclusion as me, which is, well, he's better in this movie than Top Gun. Yeah, Top Gun is way more entertaining. But this is as good a film performance as Tom Cruise has ever given because his character is so unpredictable and it never feels like an actor giving a performance. It feels like a quirky, flaky, unconventional kid acting like a quirky, flaky, unconventional kid. Now, as I said, the movie was a box office success. It grossed more than 3 times its production cost. And I guess in some quarters, people who really love the film and put it on par with The Hustler, there might have been an idea that Scorsese could get a Best Director, Academy Award nomination. It really, again, if James Cameron's not getting nominated for Aliens or David Cronenberg's not getting nominated for The Fly in 1986, I mean, I'm sorry, Marty. I love you, but some years it's just not meant to be. But Tom Cruise's performance at age 23. Now, bear in mind, when this movie was shot, Top Gun hadn't come out yet. So Cruise didn't have the backing of the golden halo of a new superstar. Nobody knew what was going to happen. I'm sure he probably thought it was going to be a hit, but he didn't know. It's not like the film had come out and Tom Cruise is saying, I'm the man. No. He was just a young actor on his way up, thrilled with the opportunity to work with Martin Scorsese and to work opposite Paul Newman. And he's never over the top. He's never showy. He is believable from first frame to last. This is exactly how this cocky, unusual, probably neurodivergent kid would be. A great film performance by the future biggest movie star, maybe in history, and for sure, the last of the old school movie stars, Tom Cruise. This has been the 14th entry in our continuing series of most underrated film performances. Tom Cruise as Vincent in Martin Scorsese's 1986 classic sequel to Robert Rosson's 1961 mega classic, The Hustler. Color of Money co-starred Paul Newman, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, John Turturro in a small role. This has been episode 154 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your early Sunday evening, late afternoon with me here in New York. But if you caught this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you caught this episode on the audio platforms such as Spotify or iTunes, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with episode 155 real soon. Till then, peace.